Welcome to the first Leadership Roundtable. I'm joined today by Mike Chanat, an EMS, Warren Howard, a former Marine, and Meredith Frey, who is a transitioning Army officer. We're going to talk today about a couple different leadership quotes or motivational quotes that have been selected by the group, and each of them will take a moment to introduce themselves. And I don't know where you guys are popping up on each other's screens, but we'll start with for me. We'll go ladies first, and then so we'll go Meredith, Warren, and then Mike. Go ahead and take a few minutes to introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, John. First of all, thanks for having us all here today. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm Meredith Frey. I'm stationed up here at Fort Drum, New York. I am transitioning out of the Army after 5 years. I specialize in logistical operations, and I'm looking forward to hopefully getting back down south to start my career with my spouse, Zach Frey. So thanks again, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. Warren, you're up.
Yep. So Warren Howard, a retired Marine, not former, but retired. And spent the last 5 years in the environmental pumping, dewatering business, and just kind of exploring new opportunities, new industries.
Exciting.
And I'm Mike Chanat. I'm a current paramedic lieutenant with the Rockland Paramedic Services up in New York. I am 35 plus years into the emergency services. I've done a little in fire, law enforcement, retired NYPD, and currently I'm working on developing new EMTs and paramedics into the future leaders we need to take our place.
That's cool. Thank you, Mike. That's honorable service there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can pop some of these quotes up on the screen. The quotes that we're going to start off with is, real success is finding your life work in the work that you love. Can you guys see that quote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So this is obviously, for me, I'll start off by saying that this is one of the quotes that is super inspiring for me. I saw it when I was young. I don't even remember how old I was. But when I saw it, I wasn't in a spot where I had found real success. I wasn't doing what I loved. I was doing what I had to do to pay the bills. And I think we've all been there. What I will say is I was out of the Army by the time I had seen this in the professional world, and it was for me. It was kind of that match that sparked my flame to say, I have to find something that I absolutely love getting up and doing in the morning. And so this quote was selected by Mike. And so, Mike, I'd like to lead off with you, and if you can tell us, when you see this quote, where does it take you?
Oh, this quote takes me way back to September of 1989. It takes me back to September of 87 when I started my career in EMS. But the next quote will bring me back to 89. It's something that I guess from when my parents raised me, we always were helping people out in church. We'd stay late. We'd be the first ones in to set up stuff. Um, Throughout the years, as I got older, found myself being a high school peer tutorer. Then I got into EMS, where it's public service. I continued with the police department, and then came back to EMS. And working with all of this, it's always been there to be somebody's help. They needed it. A lot of times people would say, oh, they think of the worst case scenario when I say I help people in their time of need. Their time of need could be like my high school peers. They weren't doing good in math. I was there to help them. I had something that was of value to them. The same thing with my skills currently. People call you anything from not feeling well with the flu, all the way up through and including their heart stopping and needing it to be resuscitated. Everything in between is kind of on that spectrum of helping somebody in their time of need. And I just, I am in my zone. I am in my passion. I've told you that I've tried to transition out of EMS. I was working part-time EMS, working full-time in supply chain. And as I've said before, I find it easier to save somebody's life than to unload a bunch of trucks and do reports for the day and make sure that everybody gets what they need out of their little boxes. So I've truly enjoyed and continue to do this. I don't think that there are many people that last 35 years in one career, let alone continue to do it, be happy every day, have a smile when they go to work, and are able to share this passion like I am. And I find myself to be truly blessed that I've found the life work that brings me true joy, true fulfillment, true happiness, and I'm able to share it with people.
That's awesome. And I saw Meredith smile, so she knows where I'm going with this. I appreciate you working that in, Mike.
Mhm.
I do want to point out my full-time job is Riverstone Logistics, and they do watch my videos. I get feedback on meetings when they watch something. So for anybody who wasn't paying attention, Mike very clearly said saving lives is a lot easier than logistics.
Yes.
All right. So, Mike, thank you for that. And I've noticed that lately in some of your posts. So I'd like to take credit for inspiring you. I've noticed that you've kind of been doing that throwback to
Yeah.
when you started. Um, Warren, I think this is kind of interesting with where you're at right now because of your transition. So I'm really interested to hear um, where specifically with what you're going through right now professionally, where does this quote take you?
Yeah, so I've never understood quotes like that. I'll be real honest. I've never had a job where I was like, man, yes, woo, getting up in the morning, going to work, gonna put in 10 hours today, gonna grind it out. Yeah. I've never, that's never crossed my brain. I've done what's necessary to, to get the job done, to get promoted, to move forward in a career. Um, the leadership aspect of any kind of job, I enjoy that. I like the mentoring, the teaching, the training, the guidance. But as far as like, like Mike's got an industry. He's an EMS. He's in full on life saving mode, and he's got a passion and a drive to get up and do that every day. And John, you've got the that end of the road delivery piece and human interaction that you seem to thrive and drive in. But I am indifferent to industry at this point. Like I just, pumps and water, whatever. I don't care. Okay, I can do it. I haven't found the I haven't found that piece of the pie that goes, let's do it. Let's really crush it. I just, I do the job.
So what you're saying is the best is yet to come. You haven't found it yet.
I don't know that my personality sits in that. I'll be honest with you. I don't know that my personality sits in the let's find a career that's going to be awesome for 35 years. I like the new challenge and the new experience. Um, usually my first year to year and a half on something is where I'm like, yeah, this is great. And after that, it becomes okay. I've done it. It is what it is. Let's find a new challenge. Let's find a new path. Let's find a new progress. Um,
I
so
was gonna, I'm sorry, I was gonna say that you're probably on the same timeline as me. 18 months is about where doing one task is where I'll sit. I haven't done the same thing for 35 plus years. I've been in the same industry doing similar things, but I've definitely changed it up every so often. I've taken on various leadership roles, training roles, education, FTO, this company, that company with the police department. Usually you had to give them an 18-month commitment when you were transferring into certain units, and I'd give them the 18 months, 36 months. And then I try to find something new to challenge myself, like you said, because if you're staying in one place doing one thing for too long, you're not growing, and that's not me. I love a new challenge, a new opportunity to grow, and that's where I think you and I are alike. With 18 months is that sweet spot of doing what we want to do, but then we got to start looking for something new.
So here's what's interesting to me, Warren, is as you're saying that, you know how my brain works. I'm a problem solver. So I'm hearing this guy say, I've never felt that burn, that drive. But then I'm also hearing you say how you like to get in and you are excited about something when it's new, but then you get to a point where you're ready for that next challenge. So the voices inside my head are screaming project management, project management, project management, which you have found yourself in the generic version of project management of leadership. You've been hired as the boss at several different places because you've got that mindset of I'm going to get in and I'm going to conquer this. So here's what I'd like to ask for anybody watching the video right now. If you disagree with me, throw it in comments of where do you think Warren should look. But if there's anybody who's watching this right now that heard the same thing, throw that in comments. Let's try to convince Warren that that's the direction he needs to go. And I will point out, Warren is on the market, not for the ladies, but for the jobs. So, all right, thanks, Warren. And so, Meredith, I'm really excited because you're at a great spot where you've served your contract to your country and you're transitioning into the civilian world, and you're like your eyes wide open, like what is that next great opportunity? So, I'd like your take on this.
So, Mike, first of all, I wrote down some questions for you because I think what you do is fantastic. And I've always had such a high level of regard and respect for anyone that works in healthcare and anyone that can go, such selfless service. We talk about that. I'm just interested to hear, like, what are your leadership values? And out of your 35 years, I think I heard that right, over 35 years of service in the healthcare industry, what are some of your non-negotiables that have gotten you to this point? Because we talk about going to work and just collecting a paycheck, but when you have that level of inspiration, that passion, and you also have a family and that work-life balance, because sometimes work here and families down here, but it has to shuffle. It's not always going to be leveled up. What are some of those values that you have and that you've instilled in place to keep you happy and to keep you coming back every day?
Well, I know that you first asked about the non-negotiables. I know John and I have talked about integrity, and that's a huge piece. I think one of your recent quotes was about maybe humbleness or something, or humility. There's no scale; it's either you are or you're not. And that's one of the things that I've kind of found to be true over the years is with integrity, it's either you have it or you don't. In the academy, they would always teach about the slippery slope and taking that 35-cent cup of coffee, and then leading up to bigger things as to, okay, well, what else are you going to take and how else are you going to compromise yourself? So being true to yourself, being true to the people, realizing that you're here for them at their worst moment, and that is an awesome responsibility, and keeping honest with what you have to do, making sure that people aren't cheating, people aren't doing things that they shouldn't be doing is where you get. And that's how you get this far. You build a reputation on who you are. And if you tarnish it, you're done. There's no coming back. You're going to spend more time trying to sell yourself and convince them of the thing that you did wrong than anything else that you could possibly do in the right way. As far as the things that I kind of keep along, I've recently in the healthcare field, we take things called CMEs, which is continuing medical education. And I've kind of put a new spin on CME being, instead of continuing medical education, being communication, mindset, and empathy. And I'm huge on the empathy part of it because the next quote that I was telling earlier that brings me back to 1989 reminds me of, I remember how I felt at that point, and it's what I've tried to pay forward, that same feeling. And I'll bring that up when we get to that point. Understanding what a person is feeling, in addition to just saying, I know what they're going through. You might know what it's like when you were in that position, but you truly do not know what they're going through. You need to understand them, get it through their lens. And that's where the empathy comes in. Whether it's the patients we're taking care of, our coworkers, if you're in a leadership position, the people that report to you, you talk about that work-life balance. We need to make sure that, hey, you're bubbly all the time. You're coming in, your head's down, you're not looking, the tone in your voice, the inflection, your uniform's not as pressed as it usually is, your laces are undone, whatever, little details like that. Picking up on that and those little cues for your people and say, hey, is everything okay? Or how are you this morning? And not just saying it in passing and then you keep walking by, actually stopping, taking the time to care, to listen to what their answer is, saying, no, not really. Well, okay, Do you want to tell me about it? I want to understand what's going on in your life. And that's where you kind of pull in, because you can't separate who the person is at home and at work. Yes, you might want to flip that switch and say, I got to go to work. I got to do these, like Warren, I got to get through it. I got to knock through it. But it's, you can't always do that, because somebody worried about their sick kid, or where the mortgage is going to go with the bank, and or what their own personal health might be, that they got diagnosis for some like terminal disease, or something that's going to knock them down for a while. It impacts them. You're a whole person, and you need to cue in on that. And obviously, communication is the biggest part. And with communication, it's making sure that your points are getting across, um, developing it. And part of communication is that listening skill that I was just talking about, and being able to get our orders across, make sure that we can inspire people and influence them to get them to do what we have to do. And a lot of that starts with your mindset. Um, you wake up every morning, and you make sure that you knock out all the stuff that's bad, all the negative thoughts. I generally tend not to try to look at my phone first thing in the morning, because I don't need those bad forecasts of who bombed who stole from who slept with who. I'm just looking for something happy.
Right.
So I actually have an Alexa thing near my bed, and I'll say, "Hey Alexa, inspire me," and that's actually an app that it does, and it'll give you a quote. Sometimes the quotes are great, sometimes they're not. But I try to think about positive things, and then I'll have Alexa play about 3 or 4 songs that I have. Probably not the most current, probably older than what I've been doing the career, but they're there from the 70s and 80s, keeping me going, keeping me inspired, keeping me rocking and blasting away. And that and the nice big cup of coffee get me going every morning.
I like that. That's a good way to kind of take something that's yours, especially those morning hours, even if it's
Yeah.
just waking up like an hour earlier, to have that time to yourself and take care of yourself first before you go and help everybody else. I think that's
Mhm.
wonderful. I'm so glad that you're able to share that. And I hope everyone else hears that and takes that into account when they wake up and they don't just roll out of bed and go right into work.
Mhm.
I love that, Mike. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well done, Meredith. Well done. Um, Mike, I just want to, I'm all about the plug, you know that. And so, what
Absolutely.
I'd like to point out, I don't, do you have a television in your bedroom?
Uh,
That'd
yes,
be,
yes. No, 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 no. I know the big flat screen. Yeah, no, 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 no. It's because it's for me. I just have to think about it, because for me, when I say I'm going to bed, that literally means I'm walking into my bedroom, put my head down, and I'm out within 30 seconds. Compared to my wife, who says, "Hey, let's go to bed," and her intention is we're going to go in. I'm going to sit up in bed for the next 2, 3 hours, unwinding from my day, watching TV, watching programs and stuff. Uh, there's times like I'll wake up in the middle of the night, roll over because the light's still on from the TV, and she will have fallen asleep. So I'll end up turning the TV off for her. But usually, we got into a spat early on, and then she realized that we have two totally different meanings of going to bed. And yeah, that's why I had to think about whether there's a TV or not, because it doesn't affect me whether there is or isn't.
what I'll say is I'm not sure what time you wake up, but I know a guy who posts some motivational stuff at about 4 a.m. So
Mhm.
just putting that out there. And you can watch him on your TV if you've got a smart TV that connects to YouTube. So
Absolutely.
just throwing that out
Understand.
there.
Understand.
All right. So Meredith, did you have anything else that you wanted to share on that?
That's all I have. And Mike, I look forward to getting to a point in my career as well,
Mhm.
finding something that I look forward to going into every day. Not to say that I don't enjoy what I do now, because I truly do. I work with uh, young soldiers from all the way from private who are 18 all the way up to
Mhm.
their 40s and 50s. And if you go in and you're not in a great mood, they notice quickly. And I think
Yes.
that's a great leadership aspect when you're able to kind of tune in with somebody and you're really focused in on them and you're paying attention. It matters. And I had the opportunity to sit down with a very senior leader a few weeks ago, and he said the same thing. It's not just asking about how their day's going in passing. Why don't you learn their first name and say, hey, you know, Zach, how are you doing today? How's your family? How's your wife? How are the kids? What are you guys doing for this summer? Any summer plans? Investing your time in them will also help them come into work or their job or whatever it may be and want to be there because they know that their leadership is invested in them or just their friend is invested in them. So
I
I
think,
appreciate that. It's interesting how that you and him were so similar. He's been in the service for about 40 years. He retired this June, and you've been in quite a while too, but just that same exact
yeah.
mindset. Stopping to ask the questions. You notice when those things are off and you're able to kind of tune in on that.
If you're looking for a tip, you just said it right there. Learn people's first names. Um, I had a challenge when we were sitting in the police academy. My particular company was 40 people, and I asked the 3 or 4 that I was sitting with. I said, "You tell me everybody's first name in this class in the company," and nobody was able to get all of them except for myself. I got everybody's first, and I find it as a very personable thing in terms of connecting, bonding with people. On a side note, it had to be like 1991, 92. There was a big train derailment in one of the subways in New York City. And I rolled up on the scene, and there was a 3-star chief. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hi, Eddie, how's it going?" And the captain on one hip and the lieutenant on the other hip shot daggers at me through their eyes because how dare I, this lowly street paramedic, address a 3-star chief as Eddie? Eddie Gabriel and I went back a long time, and Eddie and I knew each other personally, and we worked together on in a different capacity. And just because I called Eddie Eddie did not mean that I didn't respect that he's a 3-star chief. He's running this show, and whatever he tells me or needs from me, I'm there for him. I had the same thing with the police department, but by the time I was in the police department, I was a little older. So I kind of learned the savvy part of I can call all my bosses by their first name as long as we're in our little circle. But as soon as somebody from the outside came in, I had to address them by their proper title and rank so that somebody else didn't get bent out of shape. I know the
Right.
people that I made these relationships with, these connections with, that first name basis went a long way in caring about each other. So I'm glad you brought that up.
So I started laughing, Mike, because very, very early in my leadership career, around the time that I became aware of the person who Meredith picked as a quote,
Yeah.
we had a boss, and in our circle, we all joked around, had nicknames, and his was Fathead, and I don't know why. I never asked. But when we were teasing each other, we would call each other the nicknames. And then I learned very quickly that when your boss's bosses are around and their bosses are
Yes.
around, you don't use nicknames because I said, which I thought was a conversation just between him and I said, "Hey, fathead, can you grab me that?" And he turned and he looked at me, and the look on his face could have melted me. And I was like, "Why is he acting like that?" And
Yes.
later on that day, we went to lunch, and I learned why he was acting like that. So I've never used those fun nicknames since that day. So, all right. So I'm going to move on to the next quote, and I hope that my screens are right. They are not. Here we go. A little bit blurry, so I'll read it. It says, "The greatest day in your life and mine is when we take total responsibility for our attitudes. That's the day we truly grow up." This is by John Maxwell. Meredith had selected this one. And for those of you who have never followed me before, John Maxwell is my absolute leadership hero. And I'll tell the quick story, and then I'll let Meredith tell her story. So I discovered John Maxwell in the year 2000. It was the job I just told you about. I was working at a retail location. It was my first leadership role, really ever. And I was asked to go to another store in a different city and help that store with some of their processes. And it was about an hour drive. And I'm absolutely bored. So I went over to the book section and I found a discounted audio cassette that'll tell you what time period that was. And it was a set, and it was a 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll listen to this. So I buy that, I pop it in, and I'm listening to it. I ended up wearing those tapes out, and it absolutely changed my life, pivoted my career in a different direction. So Meredith, I'll turn it over to you. I'm curious. Tell me where this quote takes you.
Thanks, John. It takes me all the way back. I'm still considered a junior officer. Obviously, I'm only 5 years in, but it takes me back to when I first got up here at Fort Drum. I was a brand new platoon leader, and oftentimes and you know how it goes, you get thrown into it and you just have to learn on the job, and you have your awesome NCOs that drag you by the collar and tell you, LT, you're going to do this and this. Stay out of the way. If you have questions, ask, but other than that, just do what we're telling you to do and you'll stay out of trouble. Got it, Sergeant, thank you so much. Like, I wouldn't be anywhere without them, so I love my NCOs. But it's all about the attitude you bring in. And I learned that quickly on. I was a bit of a spitfire when I first came in. I was excited. I was super pumped and thought that I was going to change the Army. And we all think that when you go into summer, I'm going to change the culture. You're not. You are not. But what you can do is inspire those around you to do the right thing, to make better decisions, and to better the organization and uphold standards and discipline within that organization. And that was my focus. Having the right attitude is being ready to receive feedback. So it's not just your evaluations. I'm sure all of us have been under, especially in the military, you get your evaluations, whether it's annually, every couple of months. I'm not sure how it works for other branches, but in the Army, we get one every year. And every time my boss changes out, I get a change of rater. We don't like to receive negative feedback on those. People don't like it. They don't want to receive critical feedback. And if we do, there's an excuse behind it that goes, well, this person did this and this person said that, and him over there or she over there, she wasn't doing this and this. But as a leader, did you look in the mirror and have the humbleness and the humility to say, that was my fault? Where within my left and right limits did I not see this? And how can I make it better moving forward? It's accepting the responsibility, literally changing how you think and approach problems, and moving forward. And once you have that emotional stability, you will find it so much easier, and people really want to work with you because you just accept it for what it is. You take it right to the chest, even if it wasn't on you. Now, unless it's something safety wise and there was a big problem that gets hashed out individually, but simple stuff. Oh, your uniform's not pressed. Okay, well, let's all go look and see why not. Let's dig into what's going on at home. How are the finances looking at, is he getting paid? How are the meals looking? Are they happy? Have we checked into the military? Have we checked into counselor's office? Have we gone sent into behavioral health to get looked at? There's so many things that we can do once we change our attitude and we're able to change our perspective on how we approach problems and how we look at ourselves. Because I guarantee everyone's got flaws and nobody's perfect. And it took me a while to learn that. I had a great mentor, and she really said, you're constantly going to mess up. You should never be comfortable, but you control your attitude. And if you walk in here thinking that you're some hot shot, you're going to get shot down real quickly. You have to not only earn your seat at that table, but you have to keep it. And how do you keep that? You have a good attitude. Logistics, as we know, is a people's business. So you're always willing to help. You don't say no unless it's taken away from an individual's time. So if you want to tell me that we're going out to train for 3 days and we just got told that's a no-go because we're taking away from families, we're taking away from that work-life balance. But if we need to stay late to get the mission done, absolutely, that's fine. We can account for that. But it's all about the attitude, not having so much pushback, willingness to do the things, training management. So, own your own failures and sharing your successes. But I could go on forever, John, but I'll let the room delve into. I'm very passionate about that because it took me a while to learn it. But once I did, I will never look back. It's been the greatest lesson.
Well, I'm very curious to see what Mike and Warren have to say about this, because Meredith, you said something that it's a new curiosity, and another connection, Samantha Sierra challenged me on an opinion the other day, because I believe what you believe is, as a leader, I have to look in the mirror and own what is mine. And the question is, how is that received based on emotional intelligence levels? And I'm curious because I know that Mike and Warren both work with folks at both ends of that spectrum. And the curiosity is, if there's a lower emotional intelligence level, is that attitude absorbed the same way as it is with a higher emotional intelligence level? And here's my experience. I'm not saying this is the way it is, but what I've experienced is if I step up as leader and say, I own that, that's mine. That whether and usually it's that failure is my fault because of whatever. Um, when I am working with a group of folks who have a higher emotional intelligence, um, I'm usually not standing by myself. I'm usually standing amongst a group saying, "Yeah, we screwed that up." But my experience has been from an emotional intelligence perspective when I'm dealing with folks who have a lower emotional intelligence. Um, and I want to be clear, I'm talking emotional intelligence, not intelligence. And so these are folks who I would say they're not as in touch with themselves as and how they're impacting the world. It has nothing to do with how smart they are, because I work with some really, really intelligent people. But my experience has been as their leader, when I step up and say, this is my fault, generally they step up to me and say, well, it's not your fault because I could have done this better, or I'm the one that pushed that button. And so I'm just curious, and I guess we'll go in reverse order this time. I'll let Warren go first. What are your experiences with that?
Yeah. So, when you step up and take responsibility, you're gonna get a wide range of reaction to it. Most folks have never seen anybody who's willing to do that. That's my experience. In the last two places I've been, nobody's been willing to go, hey, this is not right. It's my fault, and it's my responsibility to fix it. And here are the next steps that I'm going to take to fix it for you. And I expect the feedback and accountability that I'm going to take these steps. And if I stray from that, I want you to tell me. And that's it's received in different ways. Some people see it as a weakness, like, oh man, he's just a softy and a bend over, and we can do whatever we want, and he'll do whatever it takes to fix it. Or and some folks see it as a strength and a character build of, okay, well, if he's comfortable enough to admit that he's made a mistake, or that there's a problem, then he's going to build a culture and he's going to allow us to do the same things without that repercussion. So really, it's just I've had a mixed bag with it. I've had some folks that are just really in tune and that join the progress of growing, and some folks that are just, well, that's his problem now then. All right, I don't have to deal with it because it's his problem. So it's just kind of, for me, I think it's an integrity thing. I go, like Mike said, integrity, and John and Meredith, we've all harped on the integrity train. If it's my fault, I'm going to tell you it's my fault, and I'm going to be the first one to tell you it's my fault, because that it is what it is. And then I'll see how you're going to respond to me as I go that way, and that will determine how my responses are in the future when I interact with you as an individual, and as a group. So it's a learning experience every time you do it. There are some places where I would never do it again. There are definitely people in my past where I'm like, oh, I took responsibility, and they just backed the bus up over me a couple more times to make sure that I really took responsibility for their stuff too. And I've been, there are definitely guys that and guys and gals that have jumped on and grabbed part of the train and drugged me towards success along with them, going, all right, hey, we're in this together, and let's do it. So it's a learning experience every time you do it with a new person.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good take.
I was just going to pick up on something Meredith had said earlier. Aside from standing in front of the mirror, a lot of times when you're pointing your finger, the old adage is you got to remember there's three fingers pointing back at you. So at least you need to take responsibility for three times as much as what you're blaming the other person. It's like, yes, so-and-so did push the button. However, I failed to put that big plastic box over it that says, don't push this button. I failed to train them that in this situation, you don't push the button. It's what am I doing? And like Warren was saying, is like people look at you strange, like when you're taking all this blame, like, who are you? And like, are you going to be our new scapegoat and stuff like that? Um, it, the people who, like you said, have a higher EQ, emotional intelligence, those are the ones that are going to stand with you, and they're going to say, no, 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 you can't. It's a we, and it's a team dynamic. We're all responsible for this. Um, it's the ones that are on the lower end that are going to look to skate out of anything. Even if you saw them do it, they're going to deny left and right, up and down, um, that it wasn't their fault, and they'll come up with all the excuses, even though you have a contrary argument to all the excuses that they laid out there. And then, and you know what? At that point, you still got to own it, saying, okay, you know what? What am I doing that they're making all these excuses? What kind of environment am I providing? Am I not giving them the training? Am I not telling them, hey, listen, that it's okay to say I'm wrong and to take responsibility for it? Are you not providing that psychological safety, which is one of the other buzzwords that kind of goes around? But are you not creating an environment where you can freely speak? Just like I said earlier with Ed Gabriel, first name basis, talking back and forth. It's a free environment. We're able to um, share these ideas back and forth, and we're not worried about who's going to say what. Anything that we do say is coming from a caring standpoint of view, not a critical standpoint of view. And we're looking just to improve the situation that we're all in. I think through the military, the biggest thing that you guys say is embrace the suck. You know that there's going to be a bad day. You know, and in our case, it's you have the rollover car with the person inside that's trapped. And why are they doing that? Because they were speeding while it was raining. So you're outside in torrential downpour. The rain jacket's only going to work so well. It doesn't work in monsoon season. You get drenched, and now you're miserable. There's that winter November chill coming through, but you got to get this person out. You got to get him back in the ambulance. You got to assess him. You got to get him to a trauma center. You just got to work through what it is. So it's just that type of a situation.
So, Mike, I'm glad you brought up the embrace the suck, because I was going to bring that up from one of your posts. I do want to teach you, though, the military is really good. We don't point like this. We point like this.
It's the blade, the blade. I've learned the blade. No, no, no. This is, if I'm blaming you, it's the finger. If I want you and you and you to do it and get over there, it's the power blade. I've gotten that. I'm learning. I'm learning. There's opportunity to learn.
That's great. I do have a question for the group, though.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I'm curious to hear your viewpoint. So when we talk about emotional leadership, I often see, and sometimes it's mid-level people that have been in 14 years that still have not accepted that attitude part of it. Mm-hmm. Do you all see in your organizations or the positions that you've held, does it matter how long they've been in the organization? I feel very lucky that I learned that early on. Do you notice that, they've been in 20 years, they're willing to accept responsibility, or it just doesn't matter?
Nope.
It doesn't matter ever.
It's personality based.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Because
did you all ever have an incident that happened that with that clicked? Like, John, I always refer back to your snowstorm story. Mm-hmm. That's a pivotal moment in your career right there that kind of set the conditions out for how you can proceed forward. Did anyone have like that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like this person's right, I need to kind of take a look at myself? Was there a situation that you specifically remember? Because I can remember exactly what mine looks like.
I just remember a bunch of shaky bosses that no matter what would go on, they would always be worried about the optics. They'd be worried about how are they going to get in trouble, not how are we going to get in trouble, or are we doing the best we can. And that was, there's always lessons to be had, whether somebody's yelling at you and showing you how not to be a leader, or they're sitting there and putting you under the wing. So the shaky bosses for me were always the ones that kind of showed me the way of how not to be, to realize that it's we're here to work this together, and you kind of need to take in some of that responsibility. And as much as it pains you, and nobody wants to be wrong, but and to say that I've effed up, I've messed up, yeah, it's me. People respect you for that. They look up to you. I know that as long as I've been doing this, I still have new EMTs that are as old as my kids, if not younger than some of my kids, and I'm working with them, and they look at me like, oh wow, okay, I thought I was going to get in trouble. No, 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 I'm the senior guy. I should have known better. I should have shown you, or I should have said it differently. It's not your fault. And um, it's one of the things I remember, on a side note, that I'm not willing to put on permanent record, about a day that we were doing driver training in the police academy, and I ended up throwing up during one of the course runs while the recruit was driving. But that's another story for another time.
Well, you just put it. This is going on YouTube, dude. So you just put it on
No, no,
permanent
no.
record.
Listen, no, no, no. That's permanent record, but the details are still elusive.
All right, Warren, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Uh, there's plenty of leaders out there, and I think you learn good things and bad things from each of them, right? If
Yeah.
you're not taking away something from somebody, then you're not trying to improve yourself, right? It's the Marine Corps leadership principle I come back to all the time. Know yourself, seek self-improvement. I didn't understand it as a young Marine. I really didn't understand it as an older Marine until really the last few years have been like, oh, that's it means that you got to keep growing, you got to keep learning, you got to keep adapting to new scenarios and situations, and doing it proactively instead of reactively. Um, and you gotta see the changing of the seas, so to speak, and be able to be ahead of that, in your own emotional growth, your own mental growth, your own physical growth. Every part of you has to be able to adapt before it becomes a problem, not after it becomes a problem.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, so I am going to pop the next quote up, and this is from Warren, and I think I did it right this time. So it actually popped up. So the quote says, "Empowering those around you to be heard and valued makes the difference between a leader who simply instructs and one who inspires." So Warren, lead us through this. Where does this take you?
So this is one like I told you when I sent this to you. It's one that I've been canoodling for a while because it's one of my LinkedIn posts in progress. um, there's a lot of bosses out there, and there's a lot of managers out there, and there's a lot of folks who can get the job done. Um, but the true test, and then I've always thought this: the true test is not how does your team perform when you're there watching and directing and telling. The true test of what you're doing as a leader is what do they do when you're gone? What do they do when you're on vacation for a week, or you're whatever, you're out of town doing something different, and your team has to perform without you being on site and without you being there to not necessarily hold hands, but direct the day to day and direct the response of what they're doing. And I think that's what separates a boss and a manager from a leader, and it's what separates good leaders from great leaders is how your team performs when you're not there. And that's an inspiration point, right?
Yeah.
Are you enabling your team to take chances and make decisions and grow on their own, or are you just locking your team into this is what you do A, B, C, and D, and don't vary from it no matter what?
Yeah, I actually just had this conversation with somebody this week where um, I said, yeah, here's my take on it. It's pretty simple. You should notice a manager's absence because it is in the job title. They are managing the process. They're managing the people. You shouldn't notice a leader's absence. If a good leader is doing their job, they should be able to step away from the business for a period of time, and the culture that they have instilled, the values that they've instilled, the training that they have made ensured happened should drive that business forward for a period of time. And what is that period of time? I think it all depends on how complicated the business is. But so that's it in a nutshell. I think that.
Um,
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say is I know we're usually in agreement on things, but I would kind of argue that point just a bit about noticing that you're being missed or something. At work, the company that I work for had it's the 911 paramedics, and then we had a transport division that did the interfacility transports with the ambulances. That portion of our company has been sold off for management and operations under somebody else. But I've been on jury duty for about a week and a half. I wasn't at the station, and then all this turmoil going on with the company being split and people being moved around. Um, on my drive home yesterday, from bringing my son home from vet school, um, one of my employees actually called me up and he said, "Hey, listen, I've heard a rumor. I heard that you're no longer with us." And I said, "Oh, like PT Barnum, that my death has been greatly over exaggerated." I was like, "No, I'm here. I'm still lieutenant at the station. I'll still be running things. I haven't gone anywhere. I don't plan on going anywhere. As long as I'm welcomed here, I will be here." So people do notice, I think, when a good leader is not there, because you just happen to have so many bad ones, that you learn to value the good ones when they're around, and you do sincerely and honestly miss them when they're not.
Yes, valid point, Mike. And I'll say I don't know that we do disagree, but I love the fact
Okay.
that I do love it when you challenge me. Legitimately, I like it. So I will say physically not present. Yes, absolutely. You're like,
Yeah.
hey, that dude's not here. But I think the business should be able to flow forward
Yes.
without me pushing the approve button. And
Absolutely.
but yeah, I do agree with you on that. I think a physical, and that is what I think makes a good leader. The fact that you are physically missed, where somebody's like, "Hey, where is Mike?" Now, what I love is somebody was messing with that guy. I'm like, "Oh yeah, he's not here anymore," and so
Yes.
he
Yes.
panics and he calls you. Meredith, what's your take on this?
So I took some notes, just some observations, and Mike, you hit it on the head. It's presence versus being present, but you should
Yes.
really have both. Your presence should be missed, but while you're there, you should be focused in on your team. You should have that sphere of influence and that shared understanding of exactly what they're doing, and they should have a clearly outlined knowledge of what their roles and responsibilities are, while whether you're there or you're not there, because you have set those conditions early on, and you've taken out the systemic issues, if there are any,
Yeah.
that they can come straight to you, straight to the manager, but you had that good relationship. Because people, you have to approach people differently. No one, you can't approach everybody the same way. But if they feel comfortable enough to approach you while you're gone directly, I mean, there's nothing better. I'm sure you know what that feels like
Yeah.
for everybody on this call. And when you have the lowest guy in the room just comes up to you and says, "Hey, I really appreciate your words today. I really appreciate the mentorship, the guidance. Thank you for come speak to us." It's that presence versus present. Are you just there to collect your paycheck, or are you there invested? And your team knows you're invested. They trust you. They value you.
Mike, you can be okay there.
Yeah. I think I'm going to survive. If I happen to drop off, I just need to get something to drink.
Okay, so I'll make sure because I mean you
You don't
are
have to
the
dial 911.
yeah. So Meredith, I think that's very well stated and recapped for us on this quote, and it's not surprising to me knowing what I know Warren's going through, because that I've been there. I've been exactly where he's at, and I felt that. Um, yeah. So thank you for that, Meredith.
I just may have to steal that present versus presence. I
Yes.
like that. It's very well put together.
Thank you. Absolutely. Please take it.
Yeah, I agree. So, anything else on this quote before we move on to the last quote that Mike had picked?
I'm
No?
good.
Okay. All right. So this last quote says, everybody has to start somewhere. You have your whole future ahead of you. Perfection doesn't happen right away. And I'll tell you, I love this one because it's something that we talk about a lot. When I sit through programming sessions where we're looking to improve, computer systems, computer programming, and it's a thing where we look for the minimal viable product that says we can move forward. We have enough to start the mission. It will get better as we go along, but we got to do something. And the reason I like this, Mike, is I've been a part of so many programs where people are like, well, this thing is coming. We're working on this thing, and they hold off and they hold off and they hold off, and because they want it to be perfect. And then by the time they actually launch, it's actually a flop because
Yeah.
technology has changed, the people have changed, the problems have changed. So I love this. Where does this quote take you, Mike?
This is the one that takes me back to September of '89. I just graduated as a paramedic, and this was literally my very first day working a 4 to 12 on a Friday afternoon. And I step into the ambulance, and my partner's already there. I extended my hand to him to greet, and was explaining to him that I'm very nervous. Here I am, a 20-year-old kid, about to go out there with a whole bunch of drugs and medications and responsible for literally saving people's lives in certain instances. And it's like just the pressure that was on me. And Abdo extended his hand, had this big smile on his face, and he says, "Don't worry, kid. Everybody's got to have their first day somewhere." And he set the tone. He put me at ease. I was relaxed. I knew that he had my back, um, and that things were going to be okay. And that's one of the few moments in my life. Like we have all these moments, and they remind us of something. And I remember exactly how I felt as that brand new medic on day one. It's not even like it was first couple of weeks, first couple of day one. So every time at work, regardless of which agency I'm in, if I see a new face, whether it's their day one or it's your first encounter with me, I'm going to welcome you to the agency. I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions, how you feeling, and I'm going to tell you, hey, listen, don't worry, things will get easier. You'll start to become familiar with things, and your approach to things, your process, your report writing, everything will get better. You can't have that 10,000 hours of mastery in 10 minutes on the job. Um, I had some of the younger ones because of that. My point, every couple of years, we have to take an 80-hour recertification course, or do nowadays 80 hours worth of online training. And I had added up how many I've done, and I realized that I've sat more time recertifying than some of the people have been actually doing their job. And I tried to put that into their perspective. And I said, I'm still learning. I still have things that I need to figure out how to do better or not to be blindsided with. And I try to explain to them, it's okay. You just started this. I've been doing this for 35 plus years, and I'm still making mistakes. And not like people's lives or anything, but how to close a new form when we get an update on the tablet, and the software needs to track something else, and you can't close the form unless you click this box or insert that information. Just little minor things, but there's always things to improve. Like you said, I remember in my undergraduate, they were one of the classes, and correct me, Warren, if I'm wrong, is I think from the Marine Corps, it was they have the 70% principle that as long as your plan is at 70%, just go with it. Start rolling, because even the best laid plans, once the first bullet is fired, uh,
Yeah.
go to the pot. So we want to make sure that we're moving ahead, and you need to entrust and get your people in a comfortable position so that when you need to move, you're able to move. And Abdo eventually, well, at that point that day, he was a street medic with me. He eventually rose through the ranks and became the chief of New York City EMS. So this is a guy who obviously knew how to take care of his people, and how to both manage and lead. He was able to manage the process to make sure things got done, but he was able to lead his people and inspire them and influence them to get these things done. And he's one of the role models that I've had. And I try to emulate and instill that feeling from that first day to all my new people.
So, Warren, I caught a crack of a smile there. So, is there something you want to add about that 70% and things going to hell?
It brought to mind the old Mike Tyson comment.
Yes.
His quote of "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face."
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was like, "Oh man, yeah, that's." I mean, as leaders, that's what we do every day, right? We get punched in the face, and we figure out
Okay.
how do you fix it? How do you get around it? How do you improvise, adapt, and overcome. How do you what's next? Holy cow! And then you get punched in the face again, and it's got to rinse and repeat.
Yes.
That's the job.
Yeah. So, Meredith, I saw you started laughing at that. So and I don't recall that from the Army, but do you have a similar mindset in the Army?
We do the 2/3 rule. So it's 1/3 planning. So
Mhm.
I'm planning 1/3 of the time, but I'm letting everybody else take the time to prepare 2/3. You owe that to them, let them do it. If the plan's at 70%, Mike, we're gonna start getting the show's on. We're moving. But that's
Absolutely.
you have different situations where you rehearse and it almost becomes like that skill. It's like riding a bike. You put your stuff on, you know what needs to happen, you're ready, you've done the training events to get there. Now you just need to have the confidence, the tact, and the wherewithal and the situational awareness to understand what you're stepping into. And sometimes
That's
it doesn't always happen on the first round. You may get
no.
blown up, but you have to go back and you have to keep charging. You need to be confident in your decisions and execute forward. And the people around you need to believe in them as well. So it's not just about how you feel, it's about, does my team want to back me up on this? Because I'm about to lead them into somewhere and we have to go together.
Yeah.
I take it from a personal view too. John, the other John, we had a phone call a few weeks ago and I was quite ambitious with what I was looking for. And we discussed it was going to take me a while to get to that number I was looking for. And I know, John, you and I had a conversation about it a few days ago. He said, know your value, know your worth, and have confidence in that. And I'm not telling you to set up, but maybe scale back a little bit and accept that in 2 to 3 years, you'll get to what you want. But you just have to step back for a little bit because you're just coming out of somewhere and you're essentially starting over. You're very valued. Your service is valued. Your skill set, your expertise are valued here, but you have to scale back a little bit. So we all have to start somewhere. Just scale
Yep.
it back, know your value, don't settle, certainly, but be willing to take a risk, maybe financially, but knowing that in 2 to 3 years, you're going to be exactly where you want to be, maybe further along. So that's how I took that quote, just personally and professionally.
Mhm.
It's
So,
helped me a lot.
I want to make sure we give John Ranke the appropriate call out,
Yes. Thank you,
because
John.
I'll tag him in this, and yeah, great guy. Um, I've learned a lot from him over the years on how to be a better human. So really, really good dude.
Yeah, he's
Um,
awesome.
and for those that don't know who he is, John Ranke is a Army guy, and he's become a pretty world-class recruiter for the logistics industry. Heavy focus on food service, but he does a lot of other things too.
Yeah,
So
he's great. Definitely reshaped the way I've approached transitioning, and it's been extremely beneficial and has opened a lot of doors for me. So I appreciate him.
yeah, so I'll tag him when I post this as well, because what I've really been enjoying, and I talked to my wife about this last night. I've been enjoying kind of standing back and watching connections come together. And I have Boris Panov, who's a connection of mine in Greece, and who I constantly tag as the funniest guy in logistics. Just posting hilarious memes that I've stolen most of them. Yeah, but watching a guy that I knew who worked for UPS in Omaha and Boris connect on LinkedIn, and they start to exchange and the friendship forms is really cool. So I want to try to tag everybody that we've mentioned here. I want to try to tag them in this and bring everybody together. Um, so I know you all know my process, and my process is I have a collection of memes or quotes in my phone, just things I randomly come across in life. I take out my phone, open the notepad, I jot it down, and later on that becomes inspiration for what my future posts are going to be. So everybody else is aware. On Wednesday of this week, I reached out and I said to this group, "Hey, send me your quotes that you want to talk about." And then, my intent was to have them back to everybody by noon yesterday, and I didn't get that done until last night sometime. And but so I want to end on this note. And the Mike, I did intentionally pick your quote last, about just don't be afraid to start, and I did that because and I know Mike knows this. I've exposed my files to him. He knows that I'm easily 30, 60 days out in what I plan to write about. And so my theme this week has kind of been that. It's been that don't be afraid to start over. And where my theme came from this week specifically, I actually ditched what I had planned because the inspiration, the motivation wasn't there. And I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I haven't figured that out yet. But so everything that I posted this week, I actually ended up sourcing and writing at 9 o'clock the night before it posted. And so what I think is interesting is just how aligned this group is specifically. And we are actually four people who have never physically met each other. Even though Warren and I worked together for a bit, my bad, Warren. We had dinner together one night.
Did.
We did, but it was afterwards. We were both with different companies, or I was at least with a different company. So it's interesting. What I'm seeing is the audiences that we're surrounding ourselves with are folks who think like us, but don't always agree with us, and which I love because the thinking like us part is I think we're open-minded thinkers. But we all have our own path. We all have our own experiences, and I love that. But if anybody has made it to this point in the video, my encouragement to you would be just start. Whatever it is, just start. Just get out there and try it. Because I can tell you, I have been that guy who has sat too long on the bench waiting for my turn to bat. And then the guy before me struck out and the game's over. And so it's important. You got to go after it in life. And so I appreciate that, Mike. And I had no control over the quote you picked, and it wasn't one of the ones I had shared. But it hit me, and I didn't see it until this morning. I think it was this morning, or it could have been very late last night. But it was one of those moments where you're like, this whole thing is just coming together. And I believe that things happen the way they're supposed to happen. And it's up to us to take advantage of the opportunities presented to us to make tomorrow a better tomorrow. So that's all I have to say. I'll toss it back out to you guys. Any last minute thoughts?
No, just thanks again, John. I really appreciate these kind of roundtable discussions. They're definitely enlightening, and I love seeing everyone else's perspective on things. It's interesting how similar we all are, like you said, John. But thank you for the conversation just overall.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunities as well. Like I said, I'm a people person. I think we discussed during COVID when I was isolated, quarantined for 24 days. We're social creatures, and being able to interact with people, see faces, talk beyond just words on a paper or a computer screen. It's a wonderful thing. So I appreciate you bringing this stuff together and bringing us together as well.
Thank you, Mike. Warren, any final thoughts?
I had a lot of fun this morning. I wasn't sure what to expect and what to roll into, but it was definitely interesting. I like to learn and meet new people, and this was the best of both.
Thank you. Well, and Warren, I want to thank you because you have actually been the guinea pig for a lot of my ideas, and you always just kind of roll with it. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, let's do this again.
I agree. I want to try to make this a regular thing to just get people talking, bring people together. So thank you for being the first round, and I'll post it later today, and I'll tag you all in it, of course.
Thanks,
Appreciate
John.
it. Thank you.